Hey, how are you, ma'am? Are you okay?
Yeah,
What's going on?
I can't say nothing. I can't.
Why can't you say anything?
He'll kill me if I say anything.
Tell me, brother, what's going on? I mean, what? Your wife's missing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And some person named Lisa called. You said it's a relative.
I talked to Lisa. I called her.
Okay.
Somebody just said that, said that the apostle papa just seen her up here at Walmart.
Okay.
So I just hit the road flying to get up there.
Guilty on all charges. Tonight, a Coweta County jury convicts Tiffany Foster's ex-fiancé for her disappearance and murder. And that breaking news is where we begin tonight on the News at 10. I'm Russ Spencer.
I'm Courtney Bryant. Her ex-fiancé Reginald Robertson is going to prison for life. Fox 5's Doug Evans has been following the trial and has more from the courthouse.
Count 6, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
You're watching morbid true crime, psychological true crime documentaries examining the decisions, evidence, and behavior behind real criminal cases. In March of 2021, a man in Newnan, Georgia, stood in front of local news cameras and asked the public for help finding his fiancée. He looked exhausted. He said he didn't understand what had happened to her. For months, that was the story most people believed. A young mother had vanished on an ordinary errand, and the man she was going to marry was doing everything he could to bring her home. It would take more than 4 years, a burned piece of machinery in a neighboring county, and a recorded phone call from inside a jail cell to show investigators a very different version of events. This is the case of Tiffany Foster. Tiffany Foster was 35 years old, living in Newnan, a city in Coweta County, Georgia, southwest of Atlanta. She was a mother of 3. According to family interviews, she was enrolled in college at the time and working toward a career in law enforcement. A detail her family would return to often, describing it as evidence of how forward-looking she was, how little her life resembled someone about to disappear. She shared an apartment at the Lakeside Apartments complex with her fiancé, Reginald Robertson. Nothing in her public routine, work, classes, caring for her children, suggested anything unusual in the weeks before March of 2021. Her sister, Kimberly Bryan, became the family's primary voice to the media in the years that followed. In interviews given not long after Foster vanished, Bryan described her sister as someone who simply did not walk away from responsibility, let alone from her children. That characterization would remain consistent throughout the case, through the search, through the years of uncertainty, and through the trial itself. What investigators would later document, however, was a private history that had already brought Foster into contact with police once before, a history that stood in contrast to the ordinary life she appeared to be living on the surface. Court testimony and prior police reports established that in November of 2020, officers responded to an incident involving Foster and Robertson. A 911 call from that night was later played for jurors. On the recording, Foster can be heard telling Robertson, "You're scaring me. You have a gun." Investigators say she was restrained with zip ties inside an abandoned building and that Robertson fired a weapon during the encounter. Newnan police body camera footage from that night shows Foster telling officers she was afraid to describe what had happened, saying she feared Robertson would kill her if she talked.
Hey, how are you, ma'am? Are you okay?
Yeah,
What's going on?
I can't say nothing. I can't.
Why can't you say
He'll
anything?
kill me if I say anything.
Robertson was charged at the time with kidnapping and aggravated assault. Those charges would not be resolved for years. They were still pending when Foster disappeared 4 months later. By early 2021, according to those closest to her, Foster had returned to living with Robertson. Co-workers and classmates described her as continuing her normal routine. Investigators would later note that this pattern, a documented incident of violence followed by a return to the relationship without visible disruption to daily life, is not unusual in cases involving intimate partners, and is one of the reasons early warning signs in domestic situations are so often missed by people outside the relationship. Whatever contradictions existed between the private November incident and the public appearance of the relationship, were not, at that point, visible to the people around her. The kidnapping and aggravated assault charges from that November night remained open and unresolved. They would not go to trial on their own. Instead, they would eventually be absorbed into a far larger case, one that, in early 2021, no one yet knew was coming. On March 1, 2021, Foster left the apartment she shared with Robertson. According to Robertson's own account at the time, she was headed to the grocery store. She never returned. In the days that followed, she missed work, missed a class, and missed a flight she had booked to Texas. All details her family would later point to as proof that something was deeply wrong. Her sister, Kimberly Bryan, told reporters at the time that Foster would never have simply walked away from her children. About a week after she vanished, Foster's car was located roughly 40 minutes away in College Park, in neighboring Fulton County. Her purse and her cell phone were still inside. Robertson would later be arrested, not for anything connected to her disappearance directly, but on a charge of theft, after investigators determined he had moved her car from Noonan to College Park in the days following her disappearance. That charge was eventually dropped. Publicly, Robertson continued to present himself as a man searching for answers, appearing in local news coverage and appealing to the community for help locating Foster. NBC's Dateline featured her case in a 2021 segment on missing persons. Local search efforts followed in the weeks after her disappearance, drawing volunteers from the Noonan community. Family members organized their own outreach alongside law enforcement, and Foster's case drew regional and eventually national attention when NBC's Dateline profiled her disappearance later in 2021 as part of a series on missing persons. Community members returned to Veterans Memorial Park in Noonan on the anniversary of her disappearance in the years that followed, holding balloon releases and memorial gatherings as the case remained open. Foster's sister told local reporters at one such gathering that it was encouraging to see people still paying attention, still asking what had happened. For more than 2 years, that was the version of events available to the public. A mother of 3, gone without explanation, a community holding on to hope for her safe return, and a fiancé asking the same questions everyone else was asking. Behind that public narrative, the Coweta County Sheriff's Office continued building a case. Investigators say that in the days surrounding Foster's disappearance, Robertson purchased a shovel and searched online for wood chippers. Details prosecutors would later present at trial as evidence of premeditation rather than coincidence. Detectives also began pulling cell phone records and traffic camera footage from the area around the apartment complex, footage that prosecutors say showed Foster's car moving through the area hours after Robertson claimed she had already left. In August of 2023, more than 2 years after Foster vanished, the Coweta County Sheriff's Office arrested Robertson and charged him with felony murder, malice murder, concealing the death of another, rape, kidnapping, false imprisonment, forgery, and financial card theft and fraud. At the time of the arrest, the Sheriff's Office stated publicly that while Foster's body had not been recovered, investigators were confident the evidence collected in the case confirmed she was deceased. A second man, Jeremy Walker Sr., a neighbor at the same apartment complex, was also charged with concealing the death of another and theft, accused of assisting Robertson after Foster's death. It's important to note that these were charges, not established facts, and both men were presumed innocent as their cases moved toward trial. The 2-year gap between Foster's disappearance and Robertson's arrest reflects something common in cases without a recovered body. Investigators were not simply waiting. They were assembling a circumstantial case piece by piece, digital records, forensic testing, and witness accounts that would need to be strong enough to secure a conviction without the one piece of evidence prosecutors in most homicide cases rely on most heavily. What investigators found most notable about Robertson's conduct in the months following Foster's disappearance was not any single outburst or admission, but its consistency. He continued to appear in public seeking help finding her. He continued, according to those documenting the case, to present himself as a worried partner. Detectives did not treat that composure itself as suspicious. Outward calm is not evidence of guilt. and grief presents differently across people. What drew investigative attention instead was the accumulation of specific, checkable details that didn't align with that public presentation. A shovel purchased on a particular day, a search history, a car found somewhere its owner had no apparent reason to leave it. The psychological picture that emerged at trial was less about how Robertson appeared and more about the gap between what he told people and what the records showed. As investigators reconstructed the case in the years before trial, several threads began to converge. Chief among them was a piece of physical evidence, a badly burned, rust-covered wood chipper, recovered from property connected to Robertson's grandmother in neighboring Troup County. Cadaver dogs trained to detect the scent of human decomposition reportedly alerted both inside the machine and in the surrounding soil. Separately, investigators developed a witness from inside the jail system. A former inmate named Curtis Robertson testified that while he was incarcerated alongside Robertson in 2021, he allowed Robertson to use his phone privileges. Robertson told jurors he overheard a call in which Robertson instructed someone to place canned food down a pipe leading underground at a specific property. Instructions Robertson said he believed were meant to keep Foster alive, somewhere out of sight. Believing he might be helping rescue her, Robertson reported the call to authorities. Investigators, according to trial testimony, came to view the call differently. Not an attempt to sustain Foster, but a staged diversion designed to suggest she might still be alive and to send searchers down the wrong path. Multiple officers testified that extensive searches, including of wells and rural properties using cadaver dogs, followed leads connected to that call. The forensic picture presented at trial was, by the state's own account, incomplete. 2 DNA analysts, one with the Fort Worth Police Department Crime Lab, one with the FBI, testified that human remains recovered during the investigation were tested against DNA samples from Foster's family. Neither analyst could link those remains to Foster. This is a detail worth sitting with, because it complicates rather than resolves the case. Remains were found and tested, but not confirmed as hers. Her body, as of this reporting, has never been recovered or identified. What prosecutors did present was a pattern of behavior and a chain of circumstantial evidence. Investigator Stacy Beckham, with the Coweta County District Attorney's Office, walked jurors through cell phone records and GPS data, placing Robertson's phone in patterns investigators considered inconsistent with his account of Foster's departure. Beckham also presented phone records showing calls from Walker's phone to equipment rental companies in LaGrange in the days after Foster disappeared, alongside the discovery of the burned wood chipper itself. Jurors also saw an affidavit, allegedly written by Robertson, in which he offered a relative $1,000 to testify in his defense regarding the earlier 2020 kidnapping allegation. A document recovered from personal belongings at a third party's residence. The defense, for its part, argued throughout the trial that no direct physical evidence, no confirmed DNA, no fingerprints, no recovered body tied Robertson to a killing. His attorney said he had simply been performing yard work at his grandmother's property when suspicion began to build around him. They challenged the forensic connection between the wood chipper and any crime and questioned the reliability of Robertson's account, pointing out that no decisive forensic evidence had directly linked either defendant to Foster's death. Robertson did not testify in his own defense. Neither did Walker. That absence of a single conclusive piece of physical evidence is part of what made this case unusual. Prosecutors were not working from a confession or a recovered weapon. They were working from a sequence of smaller facts: a purchase, a search, a drive, a phone call from a jail cell that only became meaningful when placed next to one another and next to the timeline Robertson had given publicly in 2021. Individually, defense attorneys argued, each of those facts had an innocent explanation. Together, prosecutors argued they told a single story. The trial took place over roughly 2 weeks at the Coweta County Justice Center in October of 2025. In opening statements, prosecutors told jurors they might never know precisely what happened to Foster, but that the evidence would show a pattern of violence and disturbing behavior by Robertson in the months before she disappeared. The defense countered that, despite years of testing and investigation, no physical evidence connected Robertson to a crime. The trial's early testimony focused heavily on the November 2020 incident, replaying the 911 call and the body cam footage for jurors before moving into the events of March 2021 and the forensic and digital evidence gathered in the years since. On October 30, 2025, shortly before 8 o'clock in the evening, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty on all 10 counts against Robertson, including malice murder, rape, and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on the murder, kidnapping, and rape counts, with an additional 80 years imposed for the remaining 7 charges, among them concealing a death, aggravated assault, forgery, and financial fraud. Walker was acquitted of concealing Foster's death, but convicted of theft by taking, related to her vehicle, and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. It should be noted clearly that Walker's acquittal on the concealment charge means that specific claim was not proven to the jury's satisfaction. Only the theft charge was. Speaking afterward, the jury foreman, identified as Brian Johnson, told reporters that despite the absence of a body, DNA, or fingerprints, the accumulated digital trail, the phone records, the searches, the timeline contradictions, left him without doubt. He also described Robertson's demeanor in the courtroom, saying his stare toward witnesses and jurors seemed intended to intimidate. What ultimately convicted Reginald Robertson was not a single discovery, but the slow accumulation of details that, on their own, might have meant very little. A shovel purchased on an ordinary day, an internet search, a burned machine on a relative's property, a phone call from inside a jail cell that looked at first like an act of mercy. None of it, by itself, proved anything. Together, presented 4 years after Tiffany Foster's disappearance, it was enough for a jury to reach a unanimous verdict. Even without the one piece of evidence every case like this is built to need. Her body has still not been found. Her family says they intend to keep looking, and investigators have said locating her remains remains a continuing priority. In cases like this one, the most important evidence is often the evidence that takes the longest to surface, and sometimes the case closes before all of it does. Thank you for watching Morbid True Crime. Subscribe for more documentary investigations examining the psychology and evidence behind real criminal cases.